On a golden morning, Evie Carter gripped the leather-wrapped steering wheel of her sleek midnight blue McLaren GT, her pulse quickening. It wasn't the growl of the engine or the open road ahead that sent adrenaline coursing through her veins. It was the weight of the manila envelope sitting on the passenger seat beside her. Inside lay the evidence she'd spent years collecting, enough to bring down an empire built on deceit. "Am I ready for this?" she murmured, her voice barely audible over the hum of the car. But it wasn't doubt that gripped her. It was the knowledge that this choice would set a domino effect in motion, one that couldn't be stopped. As she guided the car into the shadow of a gleaming corporate tower, the shrill wail of sirens pierced the air. Glancing in her rearview mirror, her stomach dropped. A police cruiser had pulled up behind her. A tall, broad-shouldered officer stepped out, his hand brushing the holstered weapon at his hip. The name tag on his chest read Wells, and the smug look on his face radiated condescension. "Nice car," Wells said, his tone sharp and mocking. "Doesn't exactly scream, belongs to someone like you." Evie's lips pressed into a thin line, her calm composure masking the storm brewing inside her. She had prepared for resistance. It was almost inevitable. Without a word, she picked up her phone and spoke quietly into it. It started. "Execute the next step." She stepped out of the car, her every movement deliberate, her tailored coat catching in the breeze. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked, her voice steady and unyielding. Wells smirked, scanning her license and registration with exaggerated suspicion. "We've had reports of stolen vehicles matching this description," he said, relishing the power imbalance. "I'm going to need to take it in for inspection." Evie's expression remained unreadable as she handed over her documents. "Do what you need to do," she replied evenly. Sliding into the driver's seat of her car, Wells looked like he'd won a small victory. He revved the engine, a self-satisfied grin plastered across his face. But what he didn't know was that Evie's car was more than it appeared. It was a fortress of technology, every feature meticulously designed to ensure her safety and her mission's success. As Wells drove off, the onboard system activated with a calm, automated voice. "Unauthorized access detected. Initiating security protocol." The steering wheel locked in Wells's hands, and the car veered off course, its navigation system overriding his control. Panic replaced his smug grin as his radio emitted nothing but static. The car sped through empty streets toward an abandoned industrial complex before coming to an abrupt stop. Evie stood waiting on the cracked asphalt, her silhouette stark against the morning light. Her boots clicked against the pavement as she approached, a faint, knowing smile playing on her lips. "Officer Wells," she said, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "I hope you're ready to answer for your actions." Behind her, a massive screen lit up, displaying damning footage. Video evidence of Wells's misconduct, racial profiling, harassment, and abuses of power, captured over months. Each clip was more incriminating than the last, accompanied by testimonies from victims who had suffered under his authority. Wells's bravado crumbled. His face turned pale as the weight of the evidence bore down on him. This isn't real," he stammered, his voice shaking. "You're framing me." Evie stepped closer, her gaze cold and unrelenting. "This is your truth," she said, her voice steady and unyielding. "You've hidden behind your badge for too long, but not anymore. Justice is here, and it's not going anywhere." As the videos continued to play, Wells stumbled back, his facade shattered. Meanwhile, Evie pulled out her phone and issued a single command. "Begin Phase 2. By the time Wells was escorted away, the story had already begun to unravel on a much larger scale. News outlets picked up the footage, broadcasting it far and wide. The public response was immediate and overwhelming. Wells was just the beginning. Evie's plan targeted the sprawling network of corruption that protected officers like him. Later, Evie stood on the rooftop of her rented apartment, the city skyline bathed in the warm hues of sunset. Her brother, Caleb, joined her, handing her a steaming cup of coffee. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their mission settling between them. "They know it's us," Caleb finally said. "They'll come after us hard." Evie took a slow sip of her coffee, her gaze steady. "Good," she replied. "The more they fight, the more they'll expose themselves. We're not stopping now. Caleb nodded, his expression a mix of pride and determination. Whatever comes next, we're in this together. Evie placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Together, she agreed, because this isn't just about taking them down, it's about building something better. For us. For everyone. As the city below buzzed with life, Evie allowed herself a rare smile. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, it felt winnable. This was no longer just her battle. It was a movement, and she was ready for whatever came next.